As I explained in the last lecture, the first thing we need to do is to rename account to data. So here I'm going to bring up the replace dialog. The shortcut on Mac is Alt, Command, and F, and on Windows probably Alt, Control, F. If you want to double check, it's right here under Edit menu, Replace. So anywhere we have account, we should replace that with data. Let's replace all. Beautiful. Now we're going to create a new component. We'll call that form. Then we'll move any reusable piece of logic into that new component. And then we'll have login form extend that new component instead of the component class in React. So it will inherit all the methods we have defined in the base class. Okay. So in the common folder, let's add a new file. We're going to call this form.jsx. On the top, we import React and create a class component called form. Now back to our login form. Every form should have a state, and in the state we should have data and errors properties. So back to our form class, I would like to initialize these properties like this. Data, we initialize it to an empty object, and errors also should be an empty object. Good. Now back to our login form. We're going to leave schema here because that is completely dependent upon each form. But we're going to move this validate as well as validate property methods into our new component because they're entirely reusable. So cut, back to the form class, paste them here. Now, because we're referencing Joy, we should also import Joy on the top. So import Joy from Joy browser. Good. Now down the end, we don't need the render method here because this form component is not supposed to render anything. Okay, delete. Now back to our login form. What is next? Handle submit. As I told you in the last lecture, the first part of this method is reusable, but what happens after will change from one form to another. So here we can do a simple refactoring like this. We can add a new method, do submit, and move these last two lines into this new method. And then in handle submit, we call this .do submit. Now look at this implementation. Do you see anything specific to the concept of logging in? Of course not. This is completely reusable. So we cut this and move it to our form class right here. Okay. What else? Now we have handle change. Once again, this is entirely reusable. So let's select it and move it to our new form. I believe we're almost done. Let's go back and double check. So we're left with the render method, which is obviously specific to each form. So we moved all the reusable methods to our form class. Finally, we need to have our login form extend the form class. So on the top, let's add form here. And of course, we should import it on the top from common/form. All right, save the changes. Back in the browser, you can see our submit button is disabled. I type A here, remove it, our validation is working. Let's fill out both fields. Now we have login, click, and we get this message, submitted. Beautiful. So with this refactoring, we simplified our login form. Next time we want to build a form, we don't have to write all that code from scratch. All we have to do is to initialize the state, set the schema for that form, determine what should happen when the form is submitted, and finally decide what to return when the form is rendered. But wait a second, we are not done yet. In the next lecture, I'm going to show you how to simplify the implementation of this render method.